Thank you for joining us again on this Thursday. We're joined tonight by Gary Stokes, Paul Nelson, and Coby Ladwig. Just quickly before we get into it, a little bit of housekeeping. We can't see or hear you, so to ask questions, please pop them into the Q&A tab down the bottom, and we will endeavour to get to all of the questions as we can. Potentially might not be as we go along, but by the end of the interview, we will have got through them all, hopefully. So I'll kick it off this evening by handing it over to Gary. Gary, why don't you give us a bit of an insight on how you got into winemaking and potentially why you got into winemaking?
Okay. Hi, Angels. Good evening. Thanks for joining us for the Thirsty Thursday. I suppose in terms of how I got into winemaking, it was seems a long time ago, back in 1995. So, but before that, I grew up in Sydney, and I grew up in Manly. My first jobs were working in liquor stores while I was studying science at Sydney University. So I worked in Liquorland in Manly and then stores on the northern beaches. So, but I was studying science at the moment, at that time, and I worked in hospitals after I graduated, but I wanted somewhere where I could be a bit more creative in terms of like a scientific and technical background. So, and I wanted to move away from Sydney, which is, everyone wants to move to Sydney, but I wanted to move to country areas and have a more relaxed, less stressful lifestyle. So I think that was one thing that drew me to winemaking, is that it's always in a regional sort of peaceful country setting. So I like the idea of winemaking because while I was studying, I was able to travel to different regions and work. I worked in New Zealand, in Marlborough and Hawke's Bay for some time, and worked in New South Wales. I also got to work in Italy, as I brought out a couple of Italian wines with Naked Wine since. South Australia, I spent a lot of time in South Australia. Now I've been in Western Australia for 10 years, so I'm sort of a ring into Western Australia, but I feel like a local now, hopefully. One day I'll be accepted. But that's one good thing about winemaking, is you get to see a lot of wines from different regions, but you get to travel as well. That's one of the perks, I suppose. Not that I will be doing a lot of traveling over the next 12 months, maybe within our states, but yeah, that's I've got a scientific mind and I like to get creative. So that winemaking was a good way to use sort of my creative side my scientific knowledge in a creative side. So yeah, that's how I got into winemaking.
Fantastic. And can you just quickly tell everyone about your brand, My Other Self, and then potentially like the philosophy behind it, or the style of wine that you like to make?
So I think the name My Other Self got it refers to me being able to because I've made a lot of wine in different regions, but this is like it's like my second personality, if you want to put it in a good way. Just to create wines out of the Great Southern. I've created wines in other parts of WA as well, but this is something that I'm passionate about because it's smaller batch, and the Great Southern has so many good regions that you can that the fruit comes from, and they all show their sort of sub-regionality. So the Maya itself is sort of like a, it's my little pet project on the side. It's something that I'd like to do apart from making, other wines. But yeah, that's the whole concept of the Maya itself brand. It's sort of smaller niche wines and tailored to the angels and the styles that you guys like, you guys love.
Cool. All right, Paul, how are you, mate? Do you want to give everyone again a little bit of an insight into how you got into winemaking? Why you got into winemaking?
It's sort of, winemaking is sort of one of those industries that you kind of sort of almost fell into back in the day, because it wasn't really a specialised university course per se. There was only a few degrees offered in that field. It was more of an advancement through horticulture and a love of being outdoors and actually working in our parents' vineyard that gave me the opportunity to sort of really realise that there was an opportunity to study and sort of experience the vocation of growing grapes and making wine. And so I failed miserably in horticulture and spent a lot of hours at the tavern drinking cheap beer and thinking what I'm going to do after horticulture, and really growing oranges and apples wasn't my thing anyway. And viticulture was offered at the university at the time, and I decided to branch out into that, and obviously spending a lot of time just in our family vineyard, being forced laboured to vineyard, to leaf pluck and to do all those bits and pieces on the vineyard on the weekend. It just grew from there. And what really cemented my love of winemaking was probably a study trip to France through studying viticulture. So initially I wanted to just to grow grapes and to be a viticulturalist, which is what I found fascinating. And then, getting into Bordeaux and Champagne and just seeing the history and the passion of wines and vines that they have there. We just didn't have that here. And it was so eye-opening to see those sort of types of, I suppose, philosophies and people with this love of wine and food that really came across from that trip. And that's really what really sort of cemented it. And so I came home from that trip and realized that that's definitely what I wanted to do. I wanted to see, that product through from grape to glass and really have a hand in the whole process. And actually, speaking a hand in the whole process, one thing that really did actually probably almost get me kicked out of the winemaking course was that when I was in Chateau St. George's in Saint-Emilion, they had this amazing cellar underneath the town there, and they had all these beautiful little archived 100-year-old bottles of wine just gathering dust in these sort of caged alcoves. And I thought it would be amazing just to touch one of those bottles. And when I touched one, it just started rolling forward to the front of the cage. And I think my winemaking career basically flashed before my eyes, and it now has gathered some new dust because it's got some this sort of clean side of it. Had never ever seen that light of day, and I can proudly say that I gave that bottle of wine a new its lease on life, and it was a rolling stone per se. But yeah, so it's been a bit of a journey, and to sort of to finish university now and to go into various winemaking roles throughout the world. It's been fantastic. I mean, most winemaking jobs or viticultural jobs around the world are pretty well blessed in terms of geographical location. There aren't too many horrible countries that grow grapes, and most of the countries that do grow grapes, you're very lucky to visit, and often very scenic. And so had the great opportunity to work in all those various locations, and now back in the Great Southern, which to me is, I think I'm very biased, but the epitome of grape growing and also winemaking, because this is where we're from. This is what we're passionate about, and I think we are well placed to produce some of the best wines in the world now.
Cool. And can you tell everyone like just a bit about it's Paul Nelson Wines, but there's quite a few tiers under the range. Can you just briefly explain those, and then the differences between them?
Yep. So we obviously Paul Nelson Wines. I only had that as it's just a very easy name to remember when I go out into the trade. But under that, we do the PN range of wines, which the Angels obviously get to see. They're very small batch, often very sort of minute parcels of fruit that we get to deal with. But for the naked portfolio, we do the Army of Grapes and the Notice Tollens range of wines, which is a pretty significant portfolio in terms of what we do in terms of the Great Southern and also viticulturally. So the Army of Grapes range of wines is more about adapting different parcels of fruit from various sub-regions within the Great Southern, and really trying to showcase, I suppose, a blend of those sub-regional wines or regions. And then the Notice Tollens range is more about just vineyards or a specific region, and sort of trying to really showcase terroir of a certain type of region or even a vineyard. So they sort of, work very well with each other, because we do work with fantastic vineyards within the region. And then within the Paul Nelson range of wines, we also have the Carry View tier, which is our own vineyard here. It's a very small vineyard, very costly vineyard, but it's very very worthwhile vineyard, because it's as Coby will remember, it's got a bit of heritage and pedigree in Denmark here. It's one of the oldest Chardonnay and Pinot vineyards in Denmark, and it produces fantastic Chardonnay and Pinot every year. And it's just sort of we're very lucky to have a hand in a vineyard like this. And I really hope that this is a continued part of our portfolio, and it's certainly, it offers another, I suppose, the extension of Chardonnay and Pinot, which we do. It's always been made in a very old school style, so lots of oak and very malolactic in the Chardonnay, very old school style. So it will really only appeal to a certain demographic, but when you're making only 100, 150 cases, that's sort of all that matters. And it's nice to sort of just have that side arm to the business, as opposed to producing the other range of wines, which gives us a bit more scope to do a few different things.
So the Carry View is a maximum of like 150 total cases for every vintage.
150 cases maximum for Chardonnay and Pinot. And I mean, just to clarify, that's around about 2.5 tons per hectare yield, which is very, very low. From a commercial viticultural point of view, you're up around sort of that 8 to 10 tons per hectare. And I mean, it's very, very low in those sort of terms. And you still have to have the same inputs, but when you taste the fruit in the vineyard, you look at the quality of the juice and the wine. It's all about longevity and that sort of that brand perseverance, and that's really important to us.
Yeah. I've just got a question here from Jeff who asks, where was your parents' vineyard?
So actually just over the road from one of the wineries that Coby used to work at. So on Hamilton Road in Denmark. So around about 5 kilometres out of town. It used to be a sheep property, and Dad planted Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot of all things in Denmark, and Cabernet and Pinot. So we got 2 things right. And then the Cabernet one every 5 years would produce something closer that would get to about 12% alcohol. But I think it's been mothballed since then. But yeah, that was where we grew up.
Fantastic. All right, Coby, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Paul.
Good. Okay, do you want to quickly let everyone know how you got into winemaking and all that, why and all that sort of stuff?
Yep. Yeah, so I sort of, believe it, I'm almost born and bred Denmark. We all moved down when we were pretty young. I think I was about 3, and Mum settled in Denmark, and there's 3 of us kids in the family, and Mum worked pretty hard. She's always been an outdoors sort of person, and I just remember growing up around vineyards. She was always working in vineyards. I have a very strong memory of, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the really cheap yellow rain mats, you know, pants, the full with a yellow hood on. I mean, she used to wear that every day through winter, sunshine. She seemed to always be wearing this raincoat. And yeah, I just grew up around vineyards. So after school, we'd ride our bikes, or we'd get dropped off on the bus and meet mum in the vineyard and hang around for a couple of hours before we went home. And so that's sort of what introduced me. But to be honest, growing up, I hated alcohol. I couldn't have thought of anything worse than being involved in alcohol. And I actually started university doing a zoology degree. So I finished my first year of zoology, loved it. I've always been quite interested in animal behaviour. And I just randomly happened to be finishing my degree back home, working over summer in one of the local fuel stations, and I bumped into an ex-babysitter who was a zoologist, and she just said, "Great, don't do it, get out. There's no work, you'll never ever get a job in it." And I was a bit like, "Oh, great," because it's a pretty hard course, and wondered what to do. And at the time, Curtin University in Perth had just opened up a new degree in winemaking, and I thought, "Oh, no, I'll give it a go. I've grown up around these sort of things, and I'll see what it's all about." And yeah, once I'd started, I thought, "Geez, this is awesome." It never ever experienced such a dynamic and interesting industry as winemaking. So when I did that, I thought, that's it. I'll travel the world. I'll never ever go home again. And as I was finishing my last year, I got off to a really great job back in Denmark. And yeah, it was one of those things I couldn't say no to. I've since been home down here, I love it. So it's a very nice spot to grow up. And as the other guys have mentioned, the Great Southern Wine Region is the biggest wine region in Australia in terms of geographical distance. It's almost like a fruit salad. You can do everything really well. You just got to know the region where to do it in. And yeah, it's pretty fortunate to be down this way. So yeah, that was my foray into winemaking. Yeah, and that was 20 years ago.
What do you love about it? You've stayed in it for so long. What do you love about it?
Yeah, I love the fact that you, like I said, it's really dynamic. Like, you know, one day you'll, like we are now, you put a nice shirt on and you'll be talking to the angels, you'll be talking to people out in the public trying the wine, and then tomorrow we'll be getting under a tractor, you'll be getting your hands dirty, you're scratching your head going, maybe I should get an electrician in to look at this, and then somehow you make it work and you get on with it. You know, it's a really, really dynamic industry, and I find it really enjoyable. And you meet everyone in the industry is the same. You know, they've got a real, I don't know, down to earth sort of character about themselves, which I really like.
Yeah. And can you again quickly tell everyone about your brand and the styles of wines that you try to make, the philosophy behind it?
Yeah, so Love is Great, and I get asked quite a bit about the name. I always swore, it's a bit of a double meaning, I always swore never, ever buy a vineyard. All my years of experience thought there's no way you ever want to own a vineyard, because it just seems to be a real money pit. And a couple of years ago, yeah, we took our first step. We bought a vineyard, quite a big vineyard, and ever since we've been throwing money at it. But we love it, but it is a bit of a graveyard for the hard-earned dollars. So hence the name Lover's Grave sort of started swirling around in my mind as it came along. And yeah, as far as wine styles go, I really enjoy making wines that are to be drunk now. You know, not that they won't age well, but I really do enjoy making wines that are, you know, more elegant tannin profile and not too jagged. It's a wine that you can drink now, and that's sort of where, you know, the styles and the way that we handle the fruit and so forth is all pointed to make a wine that's quite enjoyable now. Cool.
I mean, I think all of you guys have all been in some sort of commercial winemaking positions, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And now you're out doing your own sort of thing. What do you see as the advantages and the disadvantages between the two?
Well, I think for me personally, the biggest disadvantage is you don't have a salary, so there's not every fortnight you don't get the same paycheck coming in. So that's definitely the disadvantage. But yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate to design and build a winery, which I think in this day and age, is probably you just wouldn't do it anymore, just due to the amount of money spent on it. But I got to be involved with designing, building, and wiring, and that sort of set me on this voyage of, I really enjoyed it, and I really got stuck into it. I liked the idea of doing your own thing, and so when the opportunity came up to sort of get on board with Naked and do your own label, and I loved it. It's it's gone like that actually. It must have been the last few years, and I'll never go back to any other way. I think I just think it's a great lifestyle, and really enjoy it.
Are you guys?
So I've had the luxury of mass production in Germany, producing around about 50,000 tons in a winery there, which was basically sitting behind a computer, opening and closing valves and pasteurizing reds, and basically creating generic wines that were just horrible, and just wines that really just soulless, and there's no passion in it. And that was sort of part and parcel of the whole flying winemaking thing, that you really got flown into different locations, and you worked with different wineries and in wine in general. I mean, you see wine all around the world. It's all at different price points. There's all different varieties. It's all sold in different locations, supermarkets, retailers, restaurants, and there's obviously a wine for every occasion. But from a winemaker's point of view, it really hits home when it needs to be, you need to be passionate about it. You need to be, imprinting something on that product that you feel as though that when that person opens that bottle of wine, they're really seeing, to me, is a part of you. And so, sort of working through all these different locations and different vineyards and different industries, I think being able to now imprint my personality and also my brand on wines, which is, there's no compromising at all. It's totally Naked wines. It's totally what we want to do. Whereas before, you always had to compromise through, I suppose, price point with retailers or who you were selling to, and discounting to these people. And it's been, well, the wine industry is one of the hardest industries to, I think, probably turn a dollar in, because there are so many margins taken out of that bottle of wine before the end consumer gets to drink it. Whereas with Naked now, it's basically it's shortened that margin. It's basically winery, Naked, consumer, and to us, it's allowed us to do exactly what we want to do, and that's to source good fruit, live in the Great Southern here, and actually compete with the big guys now, because those are the guys that actually can actually discount and do all those deals. Whereas for us, it's all about just dealing with the Naked drinkers, and it's really epitomised how we have evolved as a winemaker in the region.
I'd like to, just in terms of commercial winemaking, I think they're almost nearly copying the Naked model. You see the label designs, etc., in a lot of the retail stores, and the brand creation, and it's sort of they are actually sort of trying to mimic what the Naked wines are trying to do. So, but commercial wines, they're very well made wines, and there's a lot of good economies in terms of making large volume. But I think winemaking has to be that, as I was saying before, it has to be a bit more of a creative side, and yet with large scale winemaking, I think you lose a little bit of that creative side, because with the wines that are on Naked at the moment, everything's done sort of with love, if you want to put it that way, and the passion for the vineyard and the grapes, and then how you actually make the wine. So But it is interesting to see how the big guys are trying to copy. I suppose it's a form of flattery, if you want to put it that way, with naked wine.
Hopefully. Okay, so why don't we discuss the Great Southern? I mean, can you just explain what the Great Southern entails? Because it's a big region, as Coby said, the biggest region in Australia by size. Can you explain the different sub-regions within it?
Coby?
Yeah, I mean, so I suppose to start, myself and Paul, we're both based, we both live in Denmark. So we're right on the south bottom half of West Australia, right on the coast. And so the Great Southern is made up of 5 sub-regions. So we've got Denmark, we move into Mount Barker, we've got Franklin, we've got the Pronghrups, and we've got Albany. And I suppose as you move further inland, so Denmark is dairy country, really rich, fertile soils, fantastic for Pinot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, your early ripening varieties. A bit of a struggle for your bigger reds. But as you move inland, you hit Mount Barker and you hit the soil type changes. There's a bit of a sort of a little bit of a mountain range that you come through, and Mount Barker tends to get a bit more into gravelly soils, a little bit more of a soil profile, and from there further north. So Denmark to Mount Barker is about 50 kilometres, and then from Mount Barker to Franklin River is about 70 kilometres. By the time you hit Franklin, you're basically driving the entire time just up a very slight incline. You don't realise, but you're actually quite elevated when you get to Franklin, and all you find in Franklin is this really dense, rich, gravelly soils, and they're really red, and vines really struggle to grow, which is fantastic because they end up producing this really low yields but really high intensity fruit. And a lot of people have obviously heard Riesling is fantastic out of Franklin, but Cabernets, the big reds, look great. And if you come back down again to the Pronghrups, which is probably east of Mount Barker, again probably about 50 kilometres, and you really hit this granite shelf. And we all talk about Pronghrup Riesling, that you can taste that minerality, that real granite type soil, and that is what the Pronghrups is. It does have quite a nice rich layer in the top layer of soil, but again, it's really made up of that quartz rock. And then you shift to Albany, which is not as a big viticultural region, but there's some really good vineyards in Albany, but again, you're more coastal and you tend to get more sandy soils, so really quite well drained soils, and again, they produce really good white varieties and some really good Pinot and Shiraz coming out of that area as well. So yeah, it's a pretty diverse region. As we all say, as winemakers, you're a bit spoiled for choice, because you can really, the easy one is to pick Riesling. Is there's so many different levels of Riesling that come out of the 5 sub-regions. It's really amazing, and because Riesling is so much grown in the vineyard, you can really taste that profile. It's really diverse, and so as winemakers, you're pretty spoiled for choice as to how you want to make styles and where you want to grow grapes and where you want to source things.
Yeah, I totally agree, Coby. You've pretty well iterated exactly how the Great Southern is divided and what is offered between those regions. And Riesling, to me, and Shiraz are the 2 varieties which I think showcase probably the Great Southern and specifically probably Mount Barker and Franklin for Shiraz. But I think we are growing some of the best grapes and making some of the best wines in Australia at the moment. And Shiraz-wise and Riesling-wise, they're bang for your buck as well. You put any of those wines up against any Riesling and Shiraz in Australia, even the world. I mean, I tasted a Shiraz or Syrah out of Franklin yesterday, and I put it up against a Syrah from France, and it was $120 a bottle. This bottle of wine from France, and this bottle of Franklin River Shiraz was fair enough. It was about $80, but it over-delivered tenfold. And that's the thing, like that people are getting absolute bang for their buck down here, because it's sort of one of those regions that it's emerging. It's young people. It's not Margaret River, which is I suppose still front and centre for Western Australia. But we're producing some of the best wines, I think, in Australia now, and they're value for money wines as well, which is the best thing.
Yeah.
I think it's quite good that the Great Southern sort of is not quite as famous as Margaret River. So and it does provide the value in the wines in that regard. And I agree with you, both of you guys, in terms of because of the large size of the region and all the sub-regions, you can grow practically anything. I know, obviously Cabernet and some reds don't work in all the regions, but you can obviously in Franklin River, great reds out of great Cabernet and great Shiraz out of Franklin River. And one of my favourite sub-regions is Marlborough, because I do love the Riesling and even the Pinot Noir that comes from there. So, and it's a spectacular region to go and visit in terms of the scenery.
Yeah. And also, I think alternative varieties as well now. We're not shoehorned into, Margaret River, Cabernet, Chardonnay, Sauv Blanc. Great Southern, it is diverse. We've got amazing diversity, climate. We've got amazing diversity, geography and geology. So we're not shoehorned into specific varieties. So we're actually experimenting down here with a lot of these new alternative varieties. And as the climate's changing, I think the Great Southern is really, really well set up for, the next generation of winemaking, because we've got wine regions that have diversity. We've got wine regions that can grow diverse wine varieties. And we've also got wine producers that are willing to produce and plant those varieties as well. And that, I think, is going to set the Great Southern apart from the rest of Western Australia and also Australia.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you elaborate on some of those alternative varieties? Anise potentially, or what?
Oh, definitely. I mean, to me, obviously, when you talk about climate change, you talk about, the warming regions. I mean, this year we had our earliest harvest ever at Caribou in Denmark here, which is unheard of. And it was a week and a half earlier than we've ever harvested. And it was the late February, early March when we harvested. And to me, it was sort of like one of those things where you pride yourself on being a cool climate region, but you have these anomalies and these sort of these seasonal variations now, which are forcing you to harvest when obviously things are ripe and you've got to actually harvest. So we're forced to think about the future, and I think from a Great Southern point of view, we need to start thinking about varieties that are going to give us those legs, that leg up in the future. And varieties I think that are going to do that, which are already doing that, are anise and Italian varieties that actually have retention of acidity. They have a great resistance to heat. Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, Italian varieties, northern African varieties, and that's what's happening in the Great Southern. Fiano, very small berry, thick-skinned, very easy. They handle heat stress very well. They can retain acidity very well, which is what the Great Southern is all about anyway. It's all about preservation of acidity. The wines that you taste from down here are all natural, mostly natural acid. I mean, they're just beautiful preservation of natural acids. And if anything, it's managing those acids and bringing them back. And now, like, sort of accommodating these new varieties, and that's the thing, that progressive nature of growing grapes. We're aware of what's happening out there in the world, and we need to actually amend our viticultural practices to that, and to be able to produce a wine for people that that drink everyday drinking wines. They have to be drinkable reds, drinkable whites, and that's what's happening down here. I don't know what these guys are doing from their vineyard point of views, but I think Italian varieties tend to point in that right direction. Those sort of Sicilian reds, they tend to sort of sparked my mind a little bit. And those classic Bordelais varieties are sort of waning a bit now, because, I mean, that was sort of what was happening, back 30, 40 years ago. That sort of was expected. Everyone just followed that Bordeaux, so, Cabernet, Merlot. That's what everyone just did. But we've got more, hopefully, progressive thinkers now, and we're really pushing boundaries. And I think the Great Southern is doing that better than most other regions.
Yeah, Erin is just asking what you mean by alternative variety, as opposed, what does that mean?
Well, they like to wear high heels on the weekend.
There you go, Erin.
No, look, I mean, anything alternative to the classical varieties. So, I mean, anything really that you think of as alternative is probably alternative, like Arnis, Fiano, Sangiovese. But Sangiovese and Grenache are almost becoming mainstream now. It's stuff that is really left of centre. Nero d'Avola, stuff that is grown down in southern Italy, or these obscure islands off the Mediterranean. Zinasteri in Greece. These sorts of varieties that can actually thrive in really arid and hot conditions. That have thick skins, don't require much water, but still produce a really flavoursome white or red wine and retain acidity.
Yep. Coby, Gary, anything to add?
I suppose in terms of the time that I've been in the industry, when I first started out, there was still varieties grown that were originally made into sherry. So there was a sherry and port. So there was a lot of Touriga, although Touriga is a Portuguese variety that's coming back into favour as a dry red. There was varieties made for sherry called Palomino and Doradillo. They're all being pulled out now because obviously sherry and port are not all the rage. But yeah, I've seen it, and it's gone to the Bordeaux varieties, and now it's very interesting. I suggest any of the angels to look up the Australian Alternative Varieties Wine Show, which is held in Mildura every year. You can see a lot of wines there that should be growing in Australia because they're so suited to our climate. They're Italian, they're Greek, they're Eastern European. There's lots of different varieties. So if you Google Australian Alternative Varieties Wine Show, you should see a whole heap of wines made out of varieties that you probably never heard of, but they're really suited to sort of our drier climate. Even if we start blending traditional varieties with the alternatives, like Shiraz and Sangiovese work together, Shiraz and Tempranillo, of course, that's always works together. But it's good, and the angels are willing to explore these new varieties, whereas you don't always see them, too many of them in the retail shop. So I think there's a future for, especially the Great Southern to be a champion of those varieties. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Paul and Gary. It's great that we do alternative varieties, and everyone's starting to look at that a little bit more down here. I mean, I'm still a bit of a traditionalist. I mean, I love Shiraz, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Riesling. I think those varieties in the Great Southern, I don't think will ever cease. So don't worry, Angels. We're still well and truly championing those varieties. And I think where we get a real advantage in the Great Southern is that we can produce really elegant wines, but also have this really nice power behind them. We're not just all upfront fruit power and then that's it. That's nothing else. So I find in the Great Southern, most of the varieties and wines produced in the Great Southern are really good food wines. They're really nice match. They don't overpower. They're just quite subtle. And they sit really well with food. So I think, alternative varieties or the traditional varieties, I think we're really lucky and quite well placed down here in the Great Southern with what we're doing and where viticulture is going. And you can see from Gary and Paul, Paul's very passionate about alternative varieties. I think that's great because I think it keeps that interest in the region, and it keeps all us winemakers trying new things. And as Gary said, we're now seeing a lot of Pinot Syrah, which you would never have, in your life ever seen Pinot Shiraz blends. And now they're becoming a little bit more common. It's good.
I mean, Paul mentioned if he had to choose a white and a red to sort of indicate what would be the best varieties for the region. Do you concur with that, or do you have a different opinion?
I'm a big. I mean, no, I do agree with Paul, but I do like Chardonnay from Denmark. I think Chardonnay out of Denmark is exceptional. We had a Chardonnay win James Halliday's top Chardonnay a couple of years ago from Denmark, and I think Chardonnay can do really well. I also love Shiraz, and I think that's fantastic. But I do like Cabernet Sauvignon. I think the Cabernet Sauvignon out of Franklin and the Cabernet Sauvignon out of Mount Barker are so vastly different, and yet they're not this real tomato bush herbaceous Cabernet that you can that's very typical of Margaret River. Where there's a real difference over the Cabernets that are coming out of the Great Southern. I think that excites me. I really like. I think Chardonnay, Cabernet for me is exciting over here.
Gary?
No, I agree with Coby that they're certainly keep the traditional varieties. In fact, I'm drinking two traditional Riesling and Cabernet right now, so keep them going. That's perfect. These are the stars at of the Great Southern. So. And Riesling is really difficult to grow in other places in Western Australia, but it certainly thrives in the Great Southern. So, and I love those German varieties. I love Gewürztraminer and Riesling. I know sometimes they're not, they haven't been on a crest of a wave. Well, they have been on a little bit of a crest of a wave of late, but I'm certainly, I love championing those, at least the German whites as well, the Riesling and Gewürztraminer. But keep the traditional ones, but let's experiment too.
Yeah.
Paul, you mentioned briefly the age of the vines in the region. It's young. What can you put an age on that, and then give some comparison to, say, Margaret River?
Well, the age of Great Southern vines. So Forest Hill is actually the oldest vineyard in Western Australia. So in the Great Southern, 54, 55 years old now, I think. So we are the oldest wine producing region in Western Australia. Right. I find that it's interesting because obviously Swan Valley also have some pretty aged vines up there too. So outside of Swan Valley, Margaret River and Southwest, Great Southern has the oldest vineyard down here, which is Forest Hill, which is now 55. So we've got Pinot and Chardonnay here at Carriview, which is around 35 years old. We think it's old, but I think in the scheme of things, it's probably not, a mark on some of the great vineyards in the world. And even the vineyards in WA aren't really pushing those sorts of boundaries, but it's really, I think that's what's actually pushing the Great Southern into the next level, is all these vineyards here are now starting to become mature. And that's what starts producing and making great wines is vineyard age and vineyard maturity, and you can't buy that. It's just time, and that's what we're getting now is just time. And we're seeing a lot of vineyards now just getting to that mature stage, and they're just finding their straps. And compared to the rest of the world, in so to speak, we are young, but South Australia, we're coming into our own realm there, and I think we will start, really competing on the world stage.
And Coby, you talked about Margaret River Cabernet. Can you just sort of briefly give the Angels a quick explanation of the difference between Margaret River and Great Southern?
Yeah. So I suppose, as I said, you probably need to break up. There's probably 3 distinct Cabernets. I think there's Margaret River, there's Franklin, and then we have a more further south, probably a Mount Barker Cabernet. And I think the 3 are really quite different. I always find Margaret River to be that quite herbaceous, yellow tobacco leaf character, and it's very, very distinct. We head inland to Franklin, and the Cabernets tend to take on a more blueberry, chocolate, probably a bit more fruit driven, but they actually had this really nice fine tannin structure about them. And then if you head further south to Mount Barker, you find the Cabernets are really quite structured. And so, Paul mentioned Forest Hill. Forest Hill Cabernets made back in the day, when you couldn't drink them for 20 years, it was just that they were so tight on structure, and that was very typical of Mount Barker Cabernet in the way that it grows and it produces itself. You tend to you get a little bit of fruit development, but it's more really about that acid structure behind it. So I find there's a real 3 distinct really areas of Cabernet coming out of WA, and they're all awesome in their own right. They're just very different. I tend to have a bit of a preference for Mount Barker and Franklin, because I'm a Great Southern boy, but because I like what they do. I think they're really quite distinct from what Margaret River is. I find Margaret River fantastic, but it is very much in a particular style over that way.
Is it similar for Chardonnay? I'm being a Chardonnay lover.
Yeah, I think Chardonnay. Look, Margaret River Chardonnay is awesome as well. It's obviously exceptionally well known, but yeah, again, I think I'll probably find Chardonnay out of Margaret River, Chardonnay out of the Great Southern, more particularly the cool climate, maybe Taronga up Denmark, and further south of Mount Barker. Down this way has a really distinct. Obviously, we have a lot of acidity, and we're a little bit more tight and built around that acidity, whereas Margaret River is a lot more richer and quite, Chardonnays out of Margaret River are quite powerful and quite big. And of course, you can head a little bit east, west to Pembina, and again, they're very much a cool climate Chardonnay style. But yeah, it's pretty amazing the difference. And the guys say even in a block, the same block, you can split a block in half, and Chardonnay from one side to another side, 20 metres apart, are completely different because of the soil type and what's happening. So yeah, it's quite amazing the variety and the difference that we get just within a vineyard itself.
Fantastic. Okay, just quickly, I think each one of you have got a new release wine, or sort of in the works or coming shortly. Gary, do you want to quickly drum up some business for your Winemakers Fantasy?
Yeah, sure. No, I've
just tell everyone about it.
It's been difficult to do this year, but it is getting done. So this year thank you to all the angels for voting for me to do the Winemakers Fantasy. I'm producing Montepulciano in Abruzzo. I've worked in Abruzzo for a number of vintages, as well as producing some of the wines out of Sicily. So if I wasn't living in the Great Southern, and I could live in Italy, not just at the moment, I would live in Italy. I love the food and the wine, but this is going to be something different, because Abruzzo is a region on the east coast of Italy that not a lot of people know about. Everyone sort of knows Tuscany and some of the northern regions, but Abruzzo produces some great wines in its own right. Very coastal, very maritime. I suppose a bit like the coast of WA. It's on the Adriatic, but the mountains go the very high mountains. Lots of ski fields in Abruzzo. So 2 different climatic areas in Abruzzo. You've got the real coastal areas where all the Italians go for their summer holidays, but you also got the ski fields. So you can produce a lot of different styles from the one region, a bit like the Great Southern. But the Montepulciano is the exact name of the grape is Montepulciano di Abruzzo. So it's a bigger style red, and I think it's going to be some. You see a lot more Italian reds in Australia now, but not a lot of Montepulciano di Abruzzo. So it's a bigger style. Aussies will love it because it's a bigger style red. There's big tannins. It's a food wine as well, but it's sort of it brings out the essence of Italians love food, and this will go perfectly with Italian food. So it's a big wine, and what I wanted to do is try and educate the to bring a new region to you guys in Abruzzo, because not a lot of people have to Google it to find out where it is in Italy. But it's certainly it's going to be it's been difficult this year trying to get it into fruition, but you should see it towards the end of the year, I would say. So, but I've done some wines out of Sicily in the last couple of years, Pinot Grigio and Sangiovese. They're more fruit-driven, easy drinking style, so perfect for summer. This is the Montepulciano is going to be more serious style. So Italy and Italian food and wine is one of my passions, that's for sure.
And Paul, you've got a couple. Do you want to give everyone a bit of a heads up?
Yeah, so the original question was new wines being released, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a Winemakers Fantasy about to release, and then some South Africa.
I know, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, Garrett, he really tickled my Italian fancy there, because I'm an Italiophile. I don't know what you would call yourself. What is the correlation? I'm more
Romanophile.
I'm more of,
I don't know. Italophile, yeah.
A nebophile. I'm more north of Italy, so my winemaker fantasy came out of the north of Italy, Piemonte, which originally back in the day I've been listening to some. I'm a big fan of some Roman podcasts. What actually wasn't even Italy, wasn't even considered Italy back in the day. Rome was all of Italy, so. It's completely switched these days, where the Milanese think of the South as very un-Italian, and they think of themselves as much more cultured. But that's the same as the Great Southern. We think of ourselves as much more cultured than the rest of Australia as well. So we have an amazing Italian white and red coming out of Italy this year. The Arnice has just landed, and I keep checking online as well, waiting to buy the wine, because there's only so little available, and I didn't manage to smuggle enough back in my suitcase to keep my cellar stocks alive. So the Arnice is about to arrive, which is totally exciting, and it's one of those varieties which we do make back here in Western Australia. It's a really cool variety which we've just actually started planting in the Great Southern as well, and it'll be nice to see how that corresponds varietally, stylistically, compared to the Italian stuff. The Italian whites tend to be much more nutty and sort of very sort of almost one-dimensional sometimes, because the whites in Italy just have those sort of just drinkable sort of natures. They're just there as opposed to, I suppose, those more aromatic varieties that we produce down here, like Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon and those other things, Riesling. So that our Arnice is arriving shortly, which I'm totally pumped about. And again, I'm perched at the computer ready to buy the first case. And Paul keeps telling me it's available, but it's not available today. But hopefully it's available soon. The other one is our new Notice Tollens Pinot, and we've also got a Notice Tollens Syrah, which we've just bottled, 2019. These wines are absolutely cracking wines. To be able to produce Pinot and Shiraz at this level of quality and with oak input as well, which we're able to do because of the Angels' support. It's so significant. It just you can't do it, ordinarily. So we've got those 3 wines. We've just sent off the new Riesling and Pinot Grigio and Anise, Lotus Tollens Anise as well. So we've got a heap of wines about to arrive on your doorstep. So indoor activities for the next 3 months are sorted for you guys. But yeah, it's nice. I mean, just sort of a bit of a segue, just to sort of give you guys a big sort of backslap. You've given us that opportunity to allow us to keep selling wines and keep surviving. And the only reason why we can actually sell and keep producing wines is because of you. And so, yeah, it's honestly, it's I keep pinching myself every day to think, how are we able to continue, through these sort of tough times. And you look at how everyone else is going, and Naked really has that wine making love of the community involved there, and it's amazing. So yeah, it's every day I'm thankful. Thank very much. And Shiraz, I'm drinking tonight Pinot, Shiraz, Cabernet. I've got a Negroni on the go and some olives.
Big night.
and I've got to go. Yeah, I've got to walk about 300 meters in the dark home as well.
Good luck. And Coby, you've got a new project coming up soon?
Yeah. So for anyone, that's our, you can see that's our Lover's Grave label. And, we tend to get quite some really good feedback on the label. Well, wait till you see the next label coming out. So it's called Lover's Mark. And this is Swan Valley Shiraz. So last couple of vintages, this particular vineyard was underwater, so we couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, we've come back with the Swan Valley Shiraz, and I really like the Swan Valley. As we sort of spoke about today, I don't know how much longer over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years the Swan Valley will be able to produce Shiraz that you can actually drink rather than just being fortified. But at the moment, it's looking really great, and we're really excited about it. So it's really nice drinking wine, drunk to be made now. And it's one of those wines that I reckon, mates come round as a barbecue, it'll just sit perfectly with some good conversation and then a good steak or two on the barbecue. So yeah, it's really cool.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, we're pretty much at the end. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we head off?
I'd just like to sort of echo the guys. Thanks to all the angels for keeping us going through these months, because there's a lot of wineries in Australia that sort of, they had to shut their cellar doors and restaurants, and it was quite, it's been quite an anxious 3 months for a lot of wineries in Australia. But thanks to the angels that, you love our wines and what we do, and we're passionate about bringing them to you. So I'd just like to express the thanks to all the angels.
Good on you, Gary.
Yeah, that's Gary and Paul though. So yeah, it's awesome. Big thumbs up from us and as winemakers. The support's awesome. So thank you. It allows us to do what we do, and that's why we're always smiling. So it's good. It's a good life.
Yeah, and also for those of us who are lucky enough to travel in Western Australia, we are well and truly waiting for you down here in the Great Southern. So if you want to come and experience some of the best wines in the world, we're ready.
There you go.
Bring it on.
It's an invitation for everyone. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. And thanks to the angels for watching tonight. And we will see you next week. Ciao.
Thank you.